A quick disclaimer before we begin. The PEMF podcast does not contain any medical advice, and the content provided is for informational purposes only. If you have any health concerns, please visit a healthcare professional. Welcome back to another episode of the PEMF podcast. Today our guest is a legend in the UK music scene with tens of millions of streams across streaming platforms. Stephen Anderson, but more commonly known as Professor Green. But Stephen is more than just a rapper. He's a passionate mental health activist, a biohacker, and someone who's developed an interest in health and wellness. We'll cover all of this in the podcast, but welcome today.
Thank you.
So something we have in common, and actually I think that's where your health story begins, where it starts from, is a condition called Pyloric stenosis. So
Yes.
2 in 1,000 babies have this. I've never met anyone else other than myself that have had this, and we've got kind of matching scars as well. So
Yeah.
but what's your understanding?
So I was going to say, did you have to have a revision?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So I
Yeah.
had to
Me
have the
too.
operation.
I had an upper abdominal incisional hernia, so I've got a lovely piece of mesh in there as well now.
Oh, okay.
Because it was like that. It looked like a duck's ass or a human ass. It had really stuck to everything. My understanding of it wasn't great for a long time. What I understand it as now was something that wasn't repaired properly when I was 6 weeks old. It's the pylorus is a muscle at the bottom of the stomach, which should open and close to let food pass. Mine didn't. So I was just vomiting at 6 weeks old. They did surgery. My scar actually came open and they couldn't operate on it again. So they had to do things quite not superficially, but without another operation because I was, a 6 weeks old baby. And I went through a whole life of digestive issues relating to that not being done properly, even surgery, which it turns out I probably didn't need for a hiatus hernia, which was likely either caused by or symptomatic because of the problem I was born with still being present, despite that not being what was tended to. And then last year I had a procedure called a GPOM, which was done by the most incredible gastroenterologist, if that's the correct term. He was a doctor then. He still is a doctor now, but he's also a professor, Bu Hussein Hai. We've since become friends. And I mean, it's changed my life. I can digest food. Sounds crazy, right?
Yeah.
I can digest food. That's literally what it's afforded me.
Yeah.
I went through and I was told, it was weird. I spent a lot of time going to and from the doctors, and I think there's multiple reasons for that. I obviously had an issue in my digestive tract, which lent itself to, problems and necessary investigation whenever there was something wrong because I'd been born with something and had an operation for it. But then there were things that were deemed psychological, and I was diagnosed with IBS at like the age of 6 or something crazy. And it's, what is it? Socio-physio-bio? Is that why it's a syndrome as opposed to something like that? Someone smarter than me can correct that. But basically, it's multifaceted. There's lots of contributing factors. And I would say IBS is a condition that is diagnosed when they don't know the reason behind a set of symptoms. Later on in life, finding out I'm both ADHD and autistic, that they obviously, there's a lot of correlation with digestive issues with both of those things. But to give you an idea of how severe my issue was, my pylorus, when it was looked at the time when I was given the GPOM, they grade you. So like a healthy pylorus would be 14 to 20. Mine was the worst that Dr. Bu Hussein Hai had ever seen. It was a 3.
Wow.
It was basically what I was born with.
Yeah. Have you been growing up in that time at all, or like the same symptoms you have when you're a baby? Like, is that been an issue throughout your life, or
periodically? I've either been on like Imodium or laxatives as well.
Yeah.
Food was putrefying in my stomach, sulfurous burps at its worst. And then when they done the surgery for the hiatus hernia, what happened was I had a knot at the top of my stomach because they had implanted a Lynx device. Because I had stage 2 esophagitis, stage 3 is irreversible, stage 5 I think is Barrett's it's cancer. I'm quite grateful for going vegan for a very short period because I believe that's what led to me finding out because it exacerbated all the symptoms because one of the hardest things to get nutrients from when you've got inflammation in your stomach and beyond is vegetables, especially raw ones. So I became ever more symptomatic, and I was getting this like burning lips and tongue. I didn't have reflux. I did, but I didn't have the obvious signs of it. I wasn't getting heartburn. Despite my best efforts with all that I was drinking and taking and smoking on tour. I never got reflux, but after the operation, the vomiting became so much worse because the food I was left with gastroparesis. So I've got a knot at the bottom of my stomach, which hasn't been tended to, which I was born with, which has apparently been resolved by the surgery I had when I was 6 weeks, but it wasn't. And now I've got a knot at the top as well. And gastroparesis because they were complicated. Weirdly, the surgery went really well and I reacted to it really badly. For anyone that knows what CRP is, mine was 640. They drained 4.5 litres of inflammation from my wound, my scar revision. So whether it was the mesh or it was the Lynx device that went around my esophagus or whatever it was my body didn't like it. But I'm good now.
Yeah, good.
And I know a hell of a lot about digestion and my body that I wouldn't know otherwise.
And you think this centered around your health a lot while you're growing up, and really the connection also that I think you were blaming everything on that too. So you mentioned that you were having neurological problems or mental problems too.
Yeah.
Do you think, because I think I was listening to another podcast and you said that the stomach issues you later found out were linked to anxiety. So it wasn't
but
just...
then it came full circle, and then I found out that potentially not so, i.e. like if you've got inflammation in your stomach, your brain will read that as anxiety, because when you're anxious, you produce more stomach acid, which erodes your stomach lining, which causes the same sensation as when
anxiety.
So it's it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. I understand that I'm a neurological disposition. I have a neurological difference. I hate terms like neurospicy. There's no Scoville scale for for my differences. But like it could just, like I say, ADHD and autism, with ADHD and autism, there's huge correlation with digestive issues. So that definitely plays a part in it as well. And I think it is multifaceted. So perhaps the correct term was IBS because of all the parts of it that impacted it. But I couldn't tell you which part was which part of my life. Although when they found the inflammation that was in my stomach due to everything else, I had said to my manager, Jed, my music manager, who's manager across the board, I don't have more than one. At the time, I don't know what's going on. I'm getting woken up. It's always worse when I lay down and I go to sleep, fine. And it started like getting earlier and earlier in the morning. So I'd be sleeping shorter and shorter, which obviously impacts your digestion negatively as well.
Yeah.
And it would be waking me up and I'd have to get out of bed to get rid of this feeling of anxiety. And I'm like, I'm not anxious. I'm not fucking anxious. And I've got this feeling of anxiety. And it, that was kind of, that led to me getting diagnosis of what was going on.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't get that now. That feeling of, kind of like, is this anxiety or is it not? Because the thing is, your brain will find it. One, it will interpret that as you panicking, and two, you'll then find a home for your anxiety.
Yeah. So talking about that, and you've always been quite vocal about your mental struggle and that sort of thing, but also with suicide.
Yeah.
What was it for you? It's good for a lot of people to talk about that openly.
Yeah.
Was there a catalyst really for you to decide as to why you want to talk about these subjects? So
I walked into it really naively. My dad took his own life. So did his brother 2 years before him. And so did his older brother, who was my namesake before I was born, Stephen. Put himself into a diabetic coma after an argument with his partner. I didn't know any of this until my dad did what he did. Me and my dad weren't in touch, sadly, when he did what he did. So I wrote a song about it. And I didn't expect that to become a hit. And it was. So then I had to have a conversation about it every time I went into a radio station or spoke to a publication or whatever. And so I was constantly having this conversation.
Yeah.
And I really sort of unknowingly, naively, and honestly opened the floor to the conversation around men's mental health at a time when no one spoke about any of it. And I was probably the least likely candidate to do that, not least of all because of the bravado that's associated with rap music.
Yeah.
My take on that is completely different, because the artists that I grew up listening to and that I really, favor were all very sensitive. You can't, I don't think you can be a musician and connect with people without having sensitivity.
Mm.
Yeah, there's bravado around it, but the people that I listened to wrote about what they felt, thought, or observed, and so that was how I started making music. And by doing that, I wrote about what my father did and its impact on me somewhat. And that led to those conversations, which then led to a radio documentary with my now therapist, Dr. Hyperbaric, and the suicide survivor, which then led to a documentary which was meant to be the BBC, which was meant to be a broader look at male mental health and why we struggle. And obviously those reasons, there are some of the same reasons that run throughout, but there's also, you have to respect that each person's situation is unique to them.
Yeah.
But it became, I remember they called a meeting. We were like a third of the way through, well, what would be a third of the way through shooting that documentary. And they said, the narrative that makes sense here is you looking at why your dad potentially took his own life. I kicked and screamed a bit because I was anxious. Maybe that's the wrong word. I was nervous about people seeing me cry, to be honest.
Yeah.
Showing myself at what I deemed to be my weakest, but it wasn't. It was, it's the opposite. I do believe in wearing a mask. Everyone always talks about masks as if they're negative. Like you shouldn't be showing yourself to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Be vulnerable in spaces where you can afford to be, where you're safe to be. Because sadly people will take advantage of that. And also I don't think you should share your problems all the time, everywhere. So I believe that masks can be really useful, but create sanctuary at home so you don't have to wear one when you get home is what's important. But yeah, I digress. I do that a lot.
No worries. How old was you when your dad took your life, if you don't mind me asking?
I was 24, he was 42, so I'm not far from the age he was.
Yeah.
And there's kind of two periods in life where men, I guess, most likely to do it. And I think it's sort of 15 to 22, and then again 40 to 45. Crazy that if you're a man and under 45, the thing most likely to kill you is yourself.
Yeah.
So there's a real disconnect from something for me. I also find it weird that the rates of suicide in unmodernized countries, third world countries, are less than here, which says a lot about the society we've created, this illusion of, modern life, civilization, this being civilized. Also makes me laugh when people talk about, the difficulties that people who aren't neurotypical suffer, but they suffer them because of modern Western world. If I was somewhere that wasn't modern and Western, it wouldn't need to be diagnosed. If for the larger part of evolution, it wouldn't need to be diagnosed. But then I look at people who are neurotypical, and I don't see many people who flourish in this wonderful society that we exist in.
I mean, you was young. You was breaking into the UK rap scene, and this happened. How do you think you dealt with that? Because a lot of people, that would be groundbreaking for them. It would completely disrupt, maybe take them off course. Do you think there was something that you was able to deal with a certain reason, or tried to kind of understand it from that time?
Yeah, I mean, I think I realized quite quickly, and whether or not I was able to really integrate this, I could say it out loud and I thought I understood it, but I thought I'd got to a point where I understood that the only way I could ever truly understand what he was going through was if I was in that position. And I never wanted to be there. And I think the sad thing about suicide, and for all the work that I've done as patron and now ambassador of Calm, or with the Royal Charity Heads Together, or any of the kind of positive work that I've done to try and encourage change and shift, is that you can do all of this. But the saddest thing is it's an impulsive decision, even if it, or planned in some instances, but generally you never get to catch the person at that point, because a lot of the time it will happen in absolute isolation. And that's either because it's impulsive and random, seemingly, or it's planned and therefore assured that there's going to be no one there. So it's really difficult. I have no doubt that my dad thought he was taking control. I think, people feel like that when they've lost all control elsewhere. And he probably had things that were unmanaged. If I'm ADHD and ASD, there's a high likelihood that he was one or both. We know it's, both are genetic. So, to think that, he had gone through a life of such trauma as well. From the moment he was born, his twin was stillborn. His mum walked out. He went into care because he was the sixth of 6 children, and his dad couldn't work and support his other 5 children. And then he came out of care, and stuff continued to happen in his world. I don't like to say happen to him because I don't like to think of things now as happening to me. Things happen. But yeah, there was a lot that played into it.
You think the music helped you at that time to distract you from the noise that's surrounding you, or?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I realized that, and I should probably explain why I have to explain things within context. Like, I'll have an answer, but I have to contextualize it before I can give it to you. So forgive me if it takes me a minute to come back to the question that you actually asked.
Yeah, no worries.
The music definitely helped. Music allowed me to feel something that feelings have always been really overwhelming for me. Like, I don't have broken empathy, and I really resent the idea that anyone with ADHD or in particular ASD has broken empathy. Like, there is a disconnect between my thoughts and my feelings because, sometimes I can get the worst piece of news in the world and I'll smile. It's like and it's long been that way. This is since I was a kid, and it's not because I'm happy. I can't, there's a lot of feeling there. Music is a place, and always has been a place for me to either make sense of things. I guess it was it's equivalent to journaling for me. I've always, because of my approach to it, write what you think, feel, or observe. That is, it's a cornerstone of cognitive behavioral therapy. So that's no doubt provided help for me. Also, the structure of, although I don't put things on paper, putting things into song gets them out. So immediately you're doing something beneficial to your mental health because you're getting what's inside out. And I ruminated a lot for the larger part of my life, which, it's all well and good if you're daydreaming about nice things, but I would always find my way to negative cyclical thoughts, and it was a pretty miserable existence.
Yeah.
Not being able to experience happiness without going, worry.
Yeah.
Joy, worry. Which isn't the case now. But it helped in that respect. And also it gave me freedom to express how I was feeling when I put my headphones on and I closed the door, and I could turn the music up louder than my head was. So it's always been beneficial. And I think it gave me a path. It gave me something to focus on. And I was always the shy, awkward kid. We understand that a bit better now. I don't mean me and my multiple personalities. I mean me and my family and my friends. But it gave me output, and I think, the focus, the drive towards that, I would have always said, having been called all these things, which is why I think labels dangerous. I wasn't shy. I think I was actually considered. And there was a lot going on internally that I didn't express unless there was a reason to. Or I saw someone I disagreed with, in which case I would put my hand up immediately, or I was probably the least likely out of my group of peers to become successful in music, not least of all because until I was 18, I didn't think I'd create bone in my body. But I just kept going.
Yeah.
I was relentless, and I didn't sell a record until I was 28. And for all the things I've been scared of, I wasn't scared about that. It was, I'm really grateful to people throughout my career. Mike Skinner signed me, showed me behind the curtain, and allowed me to understand that there was a living to be made from it if you got it right. Lily coming on Just Be Good to Green, which aided me getting signed, but my first record, that hit was ahead of that. And there's been, it was a wild journey. It wasn't easy, but I just kept going.
And more recently, like I say, you're talking about your mental struggles, that sort of thing. You've been recently diagnosed with ADHD, which you referenced quite a few times already. Do you think that's given you a bit of almost relief, clarification?
Yeah.
Like, you know, is that changed the person you are?
I don't think it's changed the person I am. I've done the typically ADHD thing and read everything I could on it immediately, or listened to audiobooks. It's so, bro, like without knowing, I knew. I didn't know what ADHD was, so I felt really ignorant. Now, all the work I've done around mental health, and how do you not know what ADHD is? I don't think many people actually understand it in its entirety and what it can cause, because everyone flouts this idea of it being a superpower. Well, periodically it probably was for me, and it probably did aid and drive me towards the success that I achieved. But then when I was successful, absolutely everything that came from that exacerbated the very worst parts of it and made my life really, really difficult. I'm really happy in hindsight. I can't go back to that and think of a time when I was genuinely, or any prolonged period, happy with where I was. And then there's a feeling of being ungrateful, which makes you feel guilt, which is, so it's just turmoil.
Yeah.
But I couldn't believe how stereotypically ADHD I was. It was literally paint by numbers. Like, I don't find it hard to open letters. It's impossible. And if they go in a drawer, I think it's called object permanence. Like, it basically doesn't exist. Yeah. So like, parts of my life I'm still now dealing with, like my finances, my accounts, just all sorts of things that I've let, get into a place where they never would have been had I have had better executive function or support in the areas where I didn't quite understand I needed it. When I started saying about ADHD and mental health, like, how could you not know? Well, ADHD is not a mental health condition. A lot of people end up with mental health issues because they have unmanaged or undiagnosed ADHD. And as soon as I was diagnosed, I'd done the typical, oh my God, my life could have been so different. Oh, diddums, poor me, tiny violins everywhere. Moved on from that quite quickly and just wanted to understand it. And understanding it allowed me to not, it made batting away, like my rumination was terrible. And I realized that my hyperactivity really didn't present or manifest like in sort of active behaviors, if you know what I mean. Like it wasn't physical, it was internal. And that was where a lot of the negative cyclical thinking came from, and the rumination, and being able to bat that away immediately because I understood what it was, or what was at the root of it, or why I was more prone to that, immediately made things better. And I think I've been quite lucky with medication because I've not had to go through rounds of different, trying different medications, or been relatively simple. To your question, some relief, some what could have been, but ultimately the understanding, like, ADHD is not who I am. It's just a difference in my brain and some people's. I really hate this notion that, everyone's got a bit of something. No. Everyone's got, this is ridiculous. It's like, we're still so underdiagnosed. If you look at the percentage of people likely to have it, I think it's 4 or 5%, and we're under 1%, even if you account for all the people that are on waiting lists that are waiting for 5 years, even longer in some cases. And like, if you catch it earlier, like this idea of, if we diagnose people earlier, this is going to become them. No, what you're going to do is give them a chance at a life without all of the shit that mounts up, because it was cumulative. Like, the stress from it, like 40 years of being me nearly killed me. Genuinely. Like, it led me to all the things that it leads people to, avoidance, and ultimately altering how I felt, because there were feelings that I couldn't tolerate and I couldn't shake because I didn't understand where they were coming from or why I would attach to things, especially like, I think it's called rejection sensitivity dysphoria. Like, if I had a situation in the morning, it would ruin my fucking day. Add 40 years of that up. It's easy to understand. And also ADHD being dopamine seeking, and us all being somewhat dopamine seeking now because of the devices we walk around with and the rewards we constantly give ourselves by way of food or, sex or TV or everything combined. It leads you and ADHD makes you more prone to that. And, you know, how many of us have been taught to regulate?
Yeah, exactly.
Like to actually regulate, to sit still. Especially those of us that find that a bit harder.
Yeah.
You know, I throughout my life, I'd say things periodically that I can look back on now and go, fuck, you knew. But again, couldn't integrate. So like I would say to people, if I want to finish an old song that I've started but not finished, I have to start a new one. I need to be working on 4 songs at a time. And I didn't realize I was basically nicking dopamine. I.e., if I start a new idea, that's a flood of dopamine because I'm excited by it, and I can take that and use that to finish an old song. So I knew that I didn't know what was behind it. I knew that was how I worked, but I didn't know why that was how I worked. I didn't realize that all the starter kits for things I have at home and all the things I've stopped and been so immersed in for 12 seconds and then stopped and never gone back to was because I was essentially dopamine seeking.
Yeah. While we were in Stephen's head, just before we leave, one of your more recent singles, just wanted to touch on this. Happy.
Yeah.
Is that your current flow state at the moment? Where was the motivation behind that one?
Bro, I can be in the best mood and write the saddest song, and I can be like really sad and write the happiest song. I love music that encourages you to feel whatever you feel when you feel it. And I just let whatever comes up, especially now, like without getting in the way of my own thought process creatively. Like I think a lot of people worry about taking medication for ADHD and nullifying, or suppressing their creativity. And in my experience, it hasn't done that at all. It's just allowed me to be more prolific because all those other 4 thoughts that would have got in the way and distracted me from doing what I wanted to are not there. I just have, instead of 10 voices, it's just one. And all those 10 voices are mine, thank God. But, now there's just one and it's dependent on what I want to think about. But I just literally, Z. sent me the beat and it just came out.
Yeah.
It just it was just there, and I was in my kitchen annoying the hell out of Karima, my partner and mother of my child, just singing it because I had the beat on in my, I think maybe just a single headphone, but was just singing it. And she's like, "What are you singing?" I was like, "I've got a new song." She's like, "How? What? How have you just walked?" And that's kind of that's how it happened. But yeah, I am happy, and the character development for that was funny because I was like, what if I named my inner critic? Because that again is a method you can use in therapy so as you can more easily identify with intrusive thoughts. I was like, well, what if I called my inner critic Happy? But then after naming him, he became ever more present. And so I became more and more happy, although not so because he's the negative thoughts. It was just a play on things. But quite nice to explore and to put all some of the stuff that I've learned into the idea behind the character.
So talking about the health side of things, you kind of say a lot of the time that you're undoing a lot of damage you did when you were in your 20s. So, aren't we all?
30s. Do you know what? My 20s were really, really quite clean and serene. I had a brief period of experimentation because I come from Hackney, and like, if you did anything other than weed, you were a crackhead. Even though a lot of people that enforced that became crackheads. But like, and we're doing other drugs anyway. We just didn't know. We were kids and we didn't know what their jaws swinging on a Saturday morning when they come back from place on Leverage Road. Anyway, it don't matter. But yeah, my 20s were pretty clean, but yeah, my 30s, not so much.
And one of the things I was going to ask is, we're talking about your ADHD and that sort of thing, and living kind of like a hedonistic lifestyle back in those 20s, 30s.
Yeah. You
were drinking a lot. Experimenting drugs, all that sort of thing. On the question sheet, we put, do you think that your ADHD was linked to your kind of addictions?
Yeah.
And you messaged me last night and was like, I don't like to use that term. It's kind of more. So, what did you mean by that? Where was that going?
So I feel like addiction is a really dangerous term because I want to answer this properly. Why do I think it's a dangerous term? And I'm kind of challenging myself in my own head before I talk. Critical thinking is wonderful, but not if you can't get a sentence out. Labels are really dangerous, and I think they're given to people, and understanding the power of words and you know, especially like where repetition's concerned, if you're referred to as something enough times, especially in, you know, in your house as a kid growing up, you're quite likely to start becoming that. And that can happen in, you know, an abusive relationship, you know, and you can start to present as something that you perhaps weren't. And labels, you know, I think it can become someone's identity as well. There's been times when I've misused things, and I didn't realize that I had the converse reaction to stimulants, you know, like, or the opposite, like that stimulants would often have the opposite effect on me to what they would other people. Like most people don't do a stimulant and get a quiet head, you know, or go, which is quite telling of ADHD. Like I take an amphetamine in the morning and my heart rate slows and my brain's quieter and my digestion improves.
Taking it as the fix.
So, but like, I think when people hear fix, they think of taking that hit, right? They don't think of it in any kind of literal sense. And if you think about the word fix, it is a fix for, because you're altering what you feel, right? So I think a lot of people find their way to drugs to either escape or to enhance. And my rule, again, something I said but didn't integrate, is like, to enhance is fine, to escape is not. And there was definitely a point where it was escaping something that I was feeling that I couldn't tolerate. And I really like, there's a psychoanalyst, I believe, Dr. James Hollis, who talks about angst, anger, anxiety, angina. They all come from a word that means constriction. And if there's constriction, there's going to be those things. So, you know, you can avoid that feeling, can't you? If you use a temporary fix. And what leads to addiction is it being temporary. So you keep going back to it to alter. And I think you can find your way to drugs because you're running from something. And then there's a tipping point. The needle, you know, switches over to the other half of the dial where you're not running from something anymore. Or that, even if, you know, that's where it began, you're now running towards something because of a dependence, whether that's physical or mental. And I think, to my point about addiction being a dangerous word, you know, I think misuse is a much easier way to explain to people that they might have quite a significant issue despite them thinking they have entire control over their use of things. Because if you do something once every 3 weeks, but you do it once every 3 weeks, you that is still habitual, right? And an addiction is a habit. Yeah, it's recurring. So like, I think that's an easier way to explain to people. And when, you know, I guess addiction is not just a dangerous word because of someone becoming it, but it's also a dangerous word because someone can go, well, my behaviors are not that of an addict. Addictions don't always look like addictions, right? So misuse is, and it's not semantics. Language is really important. I'm not just saying that because it's, you know, part of my job. I really care about words. But I think
it's very normalized, isn't it? That's the thing. Like,
I made England.
It's part of the culture.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it was literally, we built villages around public houses, right? They were the pubs. They were the central point. And I mean, look, this is me now. I can't go back and talk to you as myself then, but I'm like, you know, we just did an ice bath and sauna. That's altered our state, right? But it's an increase in dopamine beyond that, which cocaine is. Cocaine is 2.5 times, 250%, but it peaks after 9 minutes and then there's a trough and you can never get to that peak again. Whereas an ice bath, I think now the research shows that it's up to 600% increase in dopamine, but over a period of 4 to 6 hours, which is an increase in baseline, it doesn't create a deficit. So yeah, I alter my mood, but I'm doing it in a positive way. Again, I knew that ice baths had it, and cryotherapy. Big up Maria at London Cryo. She was my introduction to it. I knew that had a real substantial benefit for me, but I didn't realize that the benefit was beyond that of someone who is, sorry for the reference again, neurotypical. Like I knew that it made my day more even and my head a nicer place to inhabit. Didn't know why.
So yeah, like you mentioned, you know, we did a little sauna and ice bath before this. So if we've been kind of shivering throughout this, you know, I apologize. But that was a good session. You are looking at things a lot more on the healthier side of things now. Your mindset switching. You did a podcast where it was like sobriety.
Yes.
And I think even then you mentioned, I don't want to be kind of like the sober man forever. You know, it might not. It might happen. It might not. But was there? You know, you describe it that you enjoy sobriety. It's, you know, it's not something that defines you, but you enjoy it. Was there a point for you where you decided, alcohol? You know, I'm
done. It was the Wednesday before Wilderness last year, so I'm coming up to a year now. And the year before that, I'd done 10 months. But in a similar way to SSRIs, right? Like depression, in a lot of instances, is a result of circumstances. You take SSRIs and you can be, in my experience of taking them, I've tried them twice, somewhat numbed. To, you know, it makes you, there's less chance of you making effort to correct what's wrong circumstantially, because you could just take this and not feel the anxiety or whatever comes from, you know, the sadness or what comes from what's going on circumstantially that you're not tending to. And with, I've lost my train of thought. That's so annoying. Alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah, with alcohol, you can do the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't tending to things that I didn't understand, and also that I was very, very unhappy with, but didn't understand my place in. And so I stopped drinking. You know, I didn't want it as an escape because it made things ever, you know, it's so much harder when, you know, you're taking, it's a depressant. Like, let's not skirt around it either. Like, let's talk about alcohol for what it is.
Yeah.
It's a depressant. It reduces your access to your prefrontal cortex, which I don't have much access to anyway because I'm ADHD. You know, hence impulsivity and irrational decisions. You know what I mean? I just want to, you know, I guess the point I was making in that podcast when I said never say never was more about like, I don't want sobriety to be my identity. I'm in a real place of exploration, and I love psychology, and I like this idea of like there being, well, not idea of being, but like I'm enjoying trying to answer self as opposed to assume roles.
Yeah.
So like my dad took his own life. That didn't happen to me, it happened. That's not my identity. I'm not just the son of a man who took his own life. I grew up in what most people would consider to be a really difficult situation, you know, brought up by my grandmother, low income household, very low income household. That's also not my identity. They're things that I encountered as I grew up. I feel like I'm only actually starting to enter adulthood now because I grew up, what people would say or what I would have said was in the hood, but I'm not hood. That's not my identity. You know, when people don't have purpose, they find their identity will become, you know, it used to be an area. It can be as small as your estate now. You know, like I'm really like, I just want to let go of almost everything, and not in an irresponsible way, but like, who am I? What do I want to do? And what really nourishes me? Parenting really fucking nourishes me. It's hard to do that with a hangover.
Yeah.
You're a parent, you can attest to that.
Yeah.
And like just discovery, like what I was a nerd. You know, the fact that I sold drugs and had to slap people over a score, like, yeah, that grew me in a way, but in a horrible way. And it felt fucking horrible. It never sat well with me. You know, there was so much of my life that gave me these intolerable feelings, and I didn't listen to them. And I feel like I ignored self, as most of us do during those periods of our life. And to reference James Hollis again, the book, The Middle Passage, has been like one of the most important things I've ever come across, because it helped me understand things that I thought and felt but couldn't quite join the dots between or understand. And he just articulates things in such a way that I think anyone get ahead of it. Don't wait for midlife. Just get ahead of it. Yeah. I think it would benefit anyone to read that book. It's really helped me make sense of a lot and feel more assured about letting go of things and not holding on to things as my identity.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
no, I know. So I understand. I mean, Do you feel like you can moderate things like even happiness? Because like, you know, I put UK biohacker on my Instagram bio, and suddenly that means I'm a boring, you know, I go to bed at 8 o'clock and I take 50 pills.
Going to bed at 8 o'clock sick though, bro. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, let's not, like, again, like, let's sleep,
No,
bro. Oh my
yeah.
God, why did I ever do things that literally made sleep impossible? What was I doing?
Simple biohacks, simple things, stuff that we completely forget about now. But yeah, coming back to, you know, the labels and that sort of thing, I feel like I can still be this healthy biohacker, be this healthy person, do these things. But if I need to, you know, I'll have a glass of tequila or whiskey or something, but I just know the consequences of it. We were talking in the sauna just then about our Whoop bands, and one of the most profound thing for me from my Whoop band was that it really knocked alcohol on the head for me, because you see what happens to your stats the next day.
There's no hiding from it. No. Like, there is no, like, you might have if you don't wear a Whoop and you don't see the stats, you might wake up and something great might happen, right? And then you're like, oh, well, I'm going to draw a line between that dot and that dot, because that allows me to continue this behavior.
Yeah.
I'm OCD. I like patterns. God, I've got so many letters attached to me. There's me saying I hate labels. But again, I think that all comes back to, I think they all said that's actually something secondary in the way that my anxiety was. I can moderate and do. I make largely good decisions. Why did I feel weird about using the word healthy there? It's like, again, it feels absolute. And I think we can all really have quite unhealthy relationships with things, even if we're seemingly doing the good things.
Yeah.
You know, I still eat crisps.
Yeah.
You know, I can obsess over like my diet to a point of becoming unhealthy. I'm just trying to really take, although I will say, someone said to me, you know, why are you not drinking? Like, why can't you moderate? That's, you know, I don't think that extreme is healthy. And I'm like, there is literally nothing extreme when it comes to not drinking.
Yeah.
Nothing.
The opposite.
Absolutely nothing. When you think about what it actually is, which people don't like to, that's pretty extreme. So yes, I can moderate, but I choose not to. It's not like I'm worried about if I have a drink, I'm gonna whatever. It's actually just I don't want to. That's why I think it's important. Like, for me to be clear on, for me to be clear on that, because people can attach themselves to where I'm at. And I wouldn't want to trigger someone if they saw me with a drink in my hand. Like, I'm never saying never, but I don't drink at the moment. I don't want it. Do you know what I think that sentence should actually be? I don't want to drink at the moment.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Hey, I don't even know what it would feel. I can't, like, obviously there was a lot of time spent drinking, so I should know what that feels like, but I can't imagine what it would feel like to have that enter my system now.
Yeah.
Not that my body is a temple. I eat crisps, but, you know, I can't imagine what that would feel like. Oh, it doesn't, not something it's not something I miss.
No, and that's good, and that's you know, that's the way you want to be.
Yeah.
So talking about all the things, you know, you've had quite a fruitful life. Stabbed in the neck with a bottle.
Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to touch on was the car accident you had. As in you were rushed between two cars, I believe. Which was a bit of a freak accident when you was on tour, was it?
Nah, I'd done a show the night before. Everyone was littered around my house, like sleeping on sofas and whatever after we come back from the gig. And I was having 2 cars dropped off because we were going with even more people to the gig the next day. And I've woken up to come and meet the driver who's arrived with the first car. Driver's side is on the roadside, so I've walked in between my car, which was parked slightly further down the hill, and his car here. And I've walked in between the cars, spoke to him on the driver's side. I said, oh, do you know when the second car will be here? And he said, oh, it's just a few minutes by the time I've done the paperwork for this one, and gestured to the paperwork on the passenger seat. I said, cheers, man. I'm just going to go back in, get my stuff together, wake everyone up. And I never made it back to the pavement. So I've got to like there, right in the middle of, you know, the space between the 2 cars. And I've just heard boom. It was a big V8 bi-turbo and a 7-seater GL. It was huge.
Yeah.
And he's, the contract had just been given to DHL drivers, and the guy had not turned the car off. It was an eco, and he'd never driven a car with eco before. So as he's taken his foot off the pedal to reach over to get the paperwork, he's felt what he thought was the car start, gone to slam his foot on the brake. The car wouldn't have moved, but he's panicked. Instead of slamming his foot on the brake, he slammed it on the accelerator. A full pelt into my back. Luckily, I managed to lift myself up, and all that got caught was my left leg. But that did more damage to me mentally than almost anything else that's ever happened to me. Way more than when I got stabbed. It was so freak. I just yeah, man. And the recovery from that as well, and opioids.
Do you think that was that a catalyst for you to look down this health route, this biohacking route, or was that just a reason to accelerate things?
I definitely started to I lost 2.5 inches off my quad just through atrophy. So I threw my crutches away at a point and stopped taking painkillers and just said to everyone, I'm going to be a dick because I'm in pain, but I'd rather be a dick than on smack. Synthetic smack, basically. So I started to take more care of my physical health because I wanted to get back to a place of that. And I was in really good nick when that happened. Like really, like for me, really, really good shape. I trained pretty consistently for 2 years, was probably only 2 months off of what was going to be a men's health shoot. And then continued to eat like I was eating without the training. And I think I was probably the first time in my life I was ever like, apart from when I was a kid, like fat.
Yeah.
And it was horrible. Grossed myself out. Became really destructive.
The first time I kind of reached out to you was seeing you getting up every morning, getting in your brass monkey ice bath. And I
fucking hate it.
I think I said to you, I've got something for you that she's better and you can do it in the comfort of your own home. So, and that's when we got introduced you to the Accelerate PEMF and Red Light. But talk about your ice bath because you're still a big advocate for that. And obviously we've just done one together. So I've done one with the Season Pro now. Did the whole experience of documentary with Wim Hof and was that a big influence for your kind of love of ice baths or?
Yeah. And I wouldn't say love of ice baths, but love of the benefits of ice baths. Like people talk about, you know what I mean? People talk about things living in your head rent free, and like my ice bath is in my head rent free. I'll go to bed some nights going, you haven't got time to do that in the morning. When have you not got 3 minutes in the morning? Like, and I don't even do 3 minutes for the most part. It's 0.1 degree for it's horrible. It's violent, but the benefits really make it worth it. The Wim Hof thing made me lean more towards or understand the difference in benefits of an ice bath versus cryo. I still go to London Cryo regularly and love it. It is one of the most incredible things you can do for mood boost. And it's consistent. Like I know I'm never going to over-egg it because it is what it is. It's 3 minutes minus 140, or if you're really seasoned, maybe minus 150. And you've got someone that will let you do it. But it's the difference is quite substantial.
I was going to say, what are your kind of main differences between those two? Because people will just think it's cold, so you're going to get the same out.
Nah, man. Water is much, I think that the mental barrier is much, I think you build a hell of a lot more, what's the word? What's the word people always use as far as mental strength? You build a lot more...
resilience?
Resilience, thank you. I couldn't get a D out of my head. I'm like, determination. It's not that. I think you build more resilience and more... Sorry, that was a D. Discipline from using cold water. It extracts heat at 12 times the rate of air, hence why cryo has to be so cold for the benefits. But, there are similarities. They both do encourage your body to preempt hypothermia, so your blood will rush to your organs. But I never get the sort of, you said about it earlier, the sort of screaming toes or fingers in cryo, partly because you have to cover your feet and hands because your extremities can't be exposed. Whereas in cold water, what you're doing is flushing those tiny little capillaries, which are surrounded by all of these involuntary muscles, which force the blood out of them to protect your organs from preempted hypothermia. Your body's bloody intelligent. Like you can do without an arm or leg if you really have to, but your organs are necessary for you to live. So give me all the blood. I'm going to protect your organs, your body says. And and then it flushes back out, and it's full of, I think, isn't it then full of anti-inflammatory something or other? I'm not explaining this as well as I should. Told you, not a real professor.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I've seen with my Whoop as well, on the days that I don't do it, I spend more time in medium and high stress. If I do it in the morning, I don't spend as much time in medium or high stress. So therefore the impact on my body of my day is less, kind of irrespective of what I encounter. So there is a direct benefit from me getting up and getting in that.
Yeah. And I think it starts, like you said, like it literally starts from the minute you get out of bed knowing that you're going down to the ice
It's
bath.
horrible.
It's, you know,
I'll be like, but it's kind of good, right? Because you feel, so because you don't want to get in it, you'll do things that will reward you more immediately, but have some sort of delayed, not gratitude, delayed, fuck. When you delay, oh my God, that's like when you delay reward, that's not the term I'm looking for. Is it delayed gratification? It's not.
I mean, it makes sense, but
it's delayed. I can't. Anyway, point being, like, we'll do things that give reward quicker or are easier generally. So like, I find myself doing the washing up before I get in the ice bath. But then also, if I haven't done the washing up before I do the ice bath, I feel more encouraged to do the washing up after, because I've got so much dopamine that I become better at performing tasks. It's just wicked. I just think there's such pronounced benefit, especially if you're ADHD, because you're dopamine seeking. But if your blood's flooded with dopamine, guess what? You're not gonna be as vulnerable to poor choices that would give you dopamine that isn't considered a baseline. Right?
So coming away from the cold into the warm, into the house, or the sauna. You've got a sauna as well.
Yeah.
Let's talk about PEMF and red light.
Yes.
What are your kind of key takeaways? What are your benefits that you get from using that? Because you use it quite frequently. You're posting about it when you're on it, and obviously you've got one of our Accelerate systems.
Yeah.
What do you get from that?
I'm pretty sure that there's correlation between improved digestion and being able to do a solid shit. And using PEMF.
Always good.
Yeah, I know, I'm being really frank.
Yeah. And I mean, like you say,
but that area for me has been a fucking mess for the larger part of my life.
It's your main concern. Is it your main health problem?
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, because, you know, stress, especially perceived stress, right? Perspective is important when it comes to stress, because if you perceive stress to be something that will impact you physically, it does. So strength in mind is really important, because if you just take stress as something you're going to encounter, and, you know, you can develop resilience enough so that you can stop the physiological impacts of stress up to a point. Yeah. But I noticed really, and have noticed, sustained and continued, apart from periods when I haven't used it, actually, benefits from the PEMF. Yeah. And again, you're still, right? You can't go anywhere. There's a benefit from that. For me, I find that hard sometimes. But I do, and I always come off feeling more relaxed. We stupidly started having a conversation before having this conversation about placebo, right? Yeah. And you said, you know, people have asked if it's placebo, and you made the very valid point. Well, even if it were, if doing it gives you the idea that it's doing something good and you're seeing a benefit from it.
Yeah, that's it.
But it is actually doing good.
Yeah.
And we know that because there's science. This is not.
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, that's like we said when we were walking up here, it is literally like that. We get a lot of people that PEMF you can't feel, you can't see it, it's not like getting in a cold.
I always have to put my ear in it and make sure I can hear it.
Yeah,
by the way.
make sure it's sticking.
Weird,
Yes, because you need that understanding that something's happening.
Yeah.
We've got a little magnet now that you put on it just to make people understand like what's going on. You've got this magnetic field around you. But, you know, we do these trials 2-3 weeks, and then they'll say to me, you know, whatever I'm doing it for is getting better. And I'm like, great. Okay, so we've made progress.
What do people normally come to you?
So
Accelerate for
this
when they
is
the
come
thing
to you
with
for PEMF is,
what do they come to you for?
It's a very wide amount of things, because we always say that we're treating people on a cellular level. So it is literally treating cells. It's rebalancing cells, helps them separate, carries more oxygen around the body, all these different things. And all it's doing is making your body more effective. So
it must be good before an ice bath, right?
It's good before. To be honest, it's good before most of them. So ice bath, sauna, especially hyperbaric, because obviously then you're separating your cells, you're going in an oxygen-rich environment. We always say, if you want to get more out of those modalities, more out of the ice bath, more out of the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, PEMF before, treated your cells, you're putting your cells into a great state where they're going to heal themselves, and then you put yourself into these situations with hot, cold.
Red light
oxygen.
works. I mean, on the recovery side, it would probably be good after a sauna, but it would be better if you hydrated, right?
Yeah, red light's super good for like ATP production and that sort of thing. So for energy production, and the ladies like to hear it's great for your skin health. So, you know, it's like anti-aging.
I'm not a lady. I want it to be good for my skin health as well.
Exactly. I mean, that's kind of good and kind of sad that a lot of the time that's what people come to us for the red light devices for. Is like, well, would this make me look like I'm in my 20s again? You know, well, you know, but yeah, it's got great effects for skin health and that sort of thing. But it's not the only benefit of red light, and that's where, you know, the education of red light now is coming to the surface. Where
it's great though, because if someone comes to you for skin health, they're just going to get the other benefits.
They start noticing all these other things.
They're just going to come along with it. And it's what I say about the ice is like everyone's got a reason for finding their way there. You know, and whatever that is, you also get the other long list of benefits that come from it too. You can't avoid them. You don't just get the one you're looking for. You get everything that comes with it. Yeah,
exactly. So, and I mean, you were taking your PEMF mat with you on holiday as well, weren't you? When you first had it. So you was messaging me, you know, can I take this abroad with me? Can you use it?
Yeah.
So
I did get a question on the airplane because I saw your photo and it reminded me of my experience. And like, I've got a flashing device counting down strapped to my chest.
On a plane.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she go, what is that? So, it's PEMF. She was like, what's that? It was a lady working on the plane, the air hostess. And I explained, she's like, I've never seen that before. There was a slight concern, which I managed to bring her back down from, but I kind of get it now. I didn't think about how strange that might look.
I know, and you know, that tells me that it's something that's in your routine now, and it's something you miss when you haven't got it.
Yeah, and like most things, where the benefits are cumulative or consistent, tolerance doesn't reduce the benefit you get from something. It's like you generally start to notice it when you don't do it. You know, if I don't ice bath, today has been a little bit, you know, I've been a bit more susceptible to the things I've encountered.
Yeah.
And much work as I do on my mind, I suppose, to try and, you know, retain control over how things enter my world before I put anything back out. You know, when you're tired, that's really difficult. And there's never a day, unless I've overdone it. An ice bath can quite quickly take away more than it gives if you spend too long in it, as you've experienced, I believe. But there's not a day that it doesn't aid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So if I don't do it and then I don't do it for a period, I really start to notice. It's hard to be consistent. I'm me.
Yeah. Yeah. So we talk about these biohacks, you know, and we were talking about this before, and I did overdo it on an ice bath, and I did get hypothermia, and I couldn't speak. My lips were chattering for hours after. So there is an element of being careful in these things and respecting them.
Yeah. Respect is key, man. Like, and I think that's the same with plant medicines as well. Like, don't use them recreationally. It's weird. Like people talk about microdosing. I'm like, doesn't that feed into addiction? You're doing something like a little bit of something every day.
Mushrooms are kind of biohacker safe, aren't they? Like,
they're perceived to be. I think that's just a way of going, I can still do these drugs.
Yeah, exactly. You know, they grow from the earth there. So, you know, they're approved. They're biohacker approved.
Yeah. I mean, look, they encourage neuroplasticity, so there are benefits, but I think people like Clerkenwell Health, who are sort of at the forefront of leading the research around using them in a clinical setting, and doing so with the necessary therapy for them to really have benefit for people, are really important, because, you know, a lot of people, because of it doesn't do the work for you, but creating neuroplasticity allows you to unwire some of that which is hardwired, which is really important for people who have depression that they've been unable to improve in any other way. So I think, you know, the people that are at the forefront of research and are really important, and we need to change legislation. I was actually talking to the CEO of Campaign Against Living Miserably Calm about this, because of, you know, the benefits that it could have and the reduction in amounts of SSRIs needing to be prescribed, which, you know, they ruin your gut lining. That has a very negative impact on your brain, which it's trying to benefit. It's, you know, these things, and now it's also thought that depression isn't even a serotonin related condition. So again, all you've been doing is suppressing something, you know, your ability to feel something, as opposed to actually dealing with it. So I think, my segue into mushrooms has led us to another conversation, but I think it's I think it's important that those things are studied and used properly in a clinical setting, as opposed to.
But these biohacks are working for you, aren't they? Because we talked in the sauna, and you were saying about your heart health and things that you can measure now. So, you know, there was a worry for you because there's history in your family of heart conditions
and diabetes. And I'm not at risk of either. I went to Neko Health, which is incredible. It's like stepping into the future. It's the most unbelievable setting. The slippers are made by Jordan, by the way, which is mental. You get the dressing gown, which is basically the same as the wall color, which is made by Hay, which is this brand that do incredible pajamas. I love a pajama, by the way, something you might not expect ever to have come out of my mouth. I've seen some
pajamas on your Instagram.
I love pajamas, and Hay make great, Hay make great pajamas if you're watching Hay. And then you go into this room where, you know, they take bloods and they go, and, you know, like in programs that have portrayed a future where like things go through tubes, you know, to get from one place to another. It is really like stepping into the future, except it's now. And it's this incredible diagnostic service that costs 299 quid, which you couldn't get the combination of you couldn't get a single part of that, probably not even the bloods for that price anywhere else. And you have the combination of a full body scan. It takes, I think, 2,104, don't quote me on that, photos in under 2 minutes. And it retains all of that. So every mole that you've got on your body, when you go back, if you go back, you should go back. I'm going back. It's got great upsale. You know, it will identify each of those moles by location and assess the shape and color and if there's been any significant change. It also looks at your blood pressure by 4 points. They, you know, and they can tell your likelihood of veering into heart disease or diabetes given your current state and way of life. And I'm not at risk of either. And I have no doubt that the ice baths help with blood sugar management. You know, diabetes has been a real problem in my family, type 2, as has heart issues on my dad's side with the men. Touch wood. Despite my best efforts, I'm actually not at risk of either. And I kind
of shows that it's never too late as well, is it? Like you say, you know, we're burning the candle at both ends when we're young. You can to a degree undo a lot of that damage, and you know, you've gone as far as putting a hyperbaric oxygen chamber in your house. So proper, you know, like
it's hard to use that consistently because of because of time. I've got a 4-year-old as well. You know, trying to find 90 minutes every other day to get into is difficult. But like,
have you ever put him in the chamber? Because some people do put their kids.
Well, for some kids, it's really, you know, there are conditions which lend themselves to needing that. No, and I've not had him in there with me. It would be easier to do that at somewhere like where we've just been rebased, where you can literally sit and have a conversation, or at human labs where they have the most incredible facilities, but not least of all a 4-berth, 4-person hyperbaric oxygen hard-shelled chamber where you can literally sit and have a meeting while you're oxygenate, you know, in a high oxygen environment. It's incredible. But like I genuinely hand like the level of health that I have, not even my, you know, I'm not in shape at the moment. I'm only just really beginning after having the GPOM procedure just over a year ago, starting to really find my feet with training. Because previously I'd put myself, you know, if I put myself in the bin, I wouldn't be able to do anything for 2 weeks. My nervous system was so fried. I'm only just, you know, with having had that surgery, managing my ADHD, people are probably watching this going, your ADHD is managed. Still myself. I told you the medication didn't suppress anything. I'm just happier. But yeah, I'm only just finding my way back into training. So like my results were really good. And the only thing that I've done consistently over the last however long are the biohacks.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you take the tech away from biohacking, it's just ancestral living.
Yeah.
And I think that's just, it's a really important point to make, because people are like, oh, that's all, you know, either beyond me, inaccessible, or, you know, whatever they think of it and whatever they project onto the idea of it. Like we were quite intuitive as humans, and I think we live in a world of distraction. When I look at my son and just how intuitive he is for his need for water, he doesn't have to remind himself, he's just thirsty. Whereas I walk around almost constantly dehydrated, or did do for a long time. His need, you know, he's starting to fight sleep a little bit more now, but like, you know, he would just, I'm tired. You know, he wouldn't, you know, the world has not distracted him yet. He's not had the things that he's really intuitive towards drilled out of him yet. And so I look at him and just think, well, if we didn't exist in the society we did, how much more intuitive would we be? And how do we get back to that? Well, just start doing the basic thing.
Yeah.
Getting up early, going to bed, you know.
That's it. You know, we were talking before this, and it is literally, you know, this tech that we talk about, PEMF, red light, ice baths, these sorts of things, it's all found in nature. It's just replicating nature. And that's, we're living in such a toxic world, and we forget all these things. You know, I was saying to you, I've just started doing talks and things, and my takeaways are go outside, take your shoes off, look at the sun for a bit, first thing in the morning.
Mate, I've got one for you.
Yeah.
Tree huggers.
Tree huggers.
That was an offensive term.
I know.
It's literally grounding.
It is.
It's reducing inflammation.
Yeah.
Go and hug a fucking tree. It's good for you.
It really is. And that's the thing.
How did that become, like, how have we turned these things into like negatives? Like, I used to see people barefoot in the park and think, fucking nutter.
Well,
Fuck's wrong? And now I'm that guy.
I know.
Any opportunity to, like, you know, I'll purposefully wear my Birkenstocks to the park, whatever time of year it is, without socks. So as when I'm playing football with my son, I can just take my shoes off. Doesn't matter if it's cold. Even better.
I've got an absolute obsession with trees as well. And it's funny because, you know, my two little girls, I've got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. My 6-year-old notices it more, and my wife takes a piss out of me because sometimes I just want to touch a tree. Just touch it and do a bit of grounding.
Yeah.
And I'll mention, it's a nice tree. And then they'll watch me and they know that I'm going to go over there and touch it. But there's so many, there's healing powers. There really is.
What good lessons and examples, right? Because verbal cues are pretty much useless for kids. They're abuse if you repeat yourself after 5 times, I think is the psychological idea behind, or, you know, that's what's considered the beginning of abuse in psychology, as far as talking to kids and giving instruction, but like examples are what they learn by. So that's also been a part of this journey. Like, I can't just tell my son to be the person that I'd like him to be. That's not how it works. I also want him to become himself, but I want to give him an example of someone who can regulate, who looks after themselves. And they're not things we're taught, sadly.
Yeah, that's it. You know, we are taught now to live a certain way, do a certain thing.
You know, we all breathe, right, autonomously. It's just something that we do as long as we're alive.
Yeah.
But none of us do it efficiently or in a way that is very kind of the opposite, right? A lot of us will upregulate because we're so dysregulated, which is a nightmare. Like, we're just walking around making things worse because we're so dysregulated. I mean, it's funny, like, whatever, like, for a long time, when I started to become more regulated and make effort to regulate, I thought I was tired. I wasn't, I was just calm.
Yeah.
But it felt like tiredness because most of my life has been in fight or flight. Hence why my nervous system was fried. You know? And, you know, again, the great thing about normal. That was my normal. But the great thing about ice baths is, do them properly. Here, you know, you're encouraging healthier vagal tone. Is that the right terminology?
It works.
It just, you know, you switch into, if you do it properly, again, it's parasympathetic versus sympathetic, right? Activation of your nervous system. One is fight or flight, the other is rest and digest. Rest and digest. What did I struggle with my whole life? Digestion. Why? Because I was in fight or flight.
No, anyway, Stephen, we could talk for hours because, you know, this. You could talk for hours. No, this is cool. This all resonates. But we are running out of time because we spent half of our podcast time in a sauna and an ice bath.
Well, at least we got some quick fire questions, and you'll have a good night's sleep, which I'm sure you have most of the time anyway.
So just wrapping it up, you've got some new music on the way.
Yes.
Singles, albums. What are we looking at?
Everything, man. I'm just like,
all of it.
I'm just taking full advantage of the consistency I'm afforded now. I have a better grasp on my. I always call it a disposition, my neurological disposition, my brain.
Yeah.
Now I have a better understanding as to how I'm wired and how to use that to my advantage. Just taking full advantage of being able to be consistent and trying to be ever more consistent in as many aspects of my life as I can and perhaps haven't been up until now.
What can we expect from this stuff? Is it you now?
It is definitely me now. It's also me then. There's stuff that's, there's an archive of music throughout the whole period I haven't released music, and even some that goes back as far as like 2012. There's stuff that will finish. There was a chorus I wrote in 2014 called, the song was called Blue Blanket. And it was, my great grandmother had a blue blanket that I used to run into the living room and jump underneath. She slept in our living room. And that was my safe space. And it's about wrapping my son. I know him to be my son now. I didn't then. It wasn't about a son then. It was just about wrapping whoever I was writing that song about or that chorus about, then in a blue blanket to make them safe when the panic sets in. And I couldn't finish it until I had my son, and that's finished now because it talks about him and what went on. Yeah, that's a whole other conversation. We had a very fragile pregnancy, but luckily he was born extremely healthy and has been since. But there's songs that go back years that I'm just finishing now, as well as stuff I'm starting and finishing now.
Yeah.
Start and finish things. It's amazing.
No, thank you. So, if you want to find Green Stephen on socials, you're on Instagram. You've even got one about being a parent as well. So
I have, the Unlikely Dads Club. That's a whole other adventure.
Exactly. So sees a different side of you, and you've mentioned your son quite a few times in this. It's nice to see that side of you too.
It is, man.
No, good. Thanks so much. And anyone listening to this, if they can subscribe to this podcast, we can get more amazing guests like Stephen on. Yeah,
and take some of it on board. Like, have a cold shower. Just step out of your nice, lovely, comfortable, warm shower long enough for it to get really cold, and then step back in and just fucking handle it for 30 seconds. Guarantee you feel better, and let it just begin there.
Great takeaway. Thanks for your time today, Stephen.
Cheers.